What is surrogacy? Who needs it?
So surrogacy is a contract where a woman agrees to conceive, carry and give birth to a baby of the intending couple.
Single woman cannot use surrogacy unless she's widowed or divorced.
With the current rules are very biased against gender discrimination, against women. In altruistic, that is the surrogate, the surrogate is not paid any remuneration for her carrying the baby till term.
What are the things that possibly could change to make it more woman-friendly?
We should allow single mother surrogacy, we should allow single men, we should allow gay couples. You know, everyone has the right to reproduction and have a family.
Hi everybody, this is Namita Thapar, Executive Director of MCure Pharmaceuticals. Today's episode is going to talk about surrogacy. The surrogacy laws came into force in 2022 and right away there's a PIL and Supreme Court contesting many of the clauses. So what are the clauses that are working well? What are some that could possibly need changes, updates? To talk about this and a lot more is one of the most reputed gynacs of this country and my dear friend, Dr. Kiran. Doctor, you're looking lovely as always and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Namita. It's always such a pleasure to be on your show. And the vibrant you.
No, I think it's mutual. There's a great excuse for two women who love and adore each other to connect. And today couldn't be any better because this is one topic that really needs a lot in terms of awareness, discussion, going clause by clause. So let's start with the basics. What is surrogacy? Who needs it?
So surrogacy is a contract where a woman agrees to conceive, carry and give birth to a baby of the intending couple, right? And promises to give that baby to the couple after birth. Mm-hmm. Now, gestational surrogacy is when the couple go through an IVF process, get an embryo. That embryo is put into the surrogate.
Right.
And she carries it to term and hands over the baby. So that is surrogacy.
Okay. And what is all this buzz around contentious issues in terms of, I read some clauses which to me, very honestly, seem like they need to keep up with the times. A lot of women are choosing not to get married and be single. And a single woman cannot use surrogacy unless she's widowed or divorced. That doesn't really make sense, right?
I know. So to come to the right context, let's see what surrogacy was in India before 1922 and now.
Okay.
So earlier, there were no surrogacy rules. And surrogacy we were in India the surrogate capital of the world because people from around the world could come to India and at a very cheap cost get surrogacy done. Now it worked very well because the surrogate women who were otherwise very impoverished, would get a tidy sum of money. They would send their children to school. They would have a roof over their head. It worked very well for them. It worked very well for the couples also who couldn't have a baby because of various medical reasons, which I'll tell you. And so they would then have a surrogate to carry their baby. And so that was the ideal.
Right.
Then what happened is the surrogacy, since it was not governed by laws, there was so much of hanky-panky going on. The surrogate agencies would then dupe the women, not pay them enough. Then if there was something wrong with the baby, then the surrogate parents would not take the intending couples would not take the babies, and there were case after case after case. So therefore, then the government clamped on surrogacy. But unfortunately, they've thrown the baby out with the bathwater.
Exactly. That's such a lovely term to use.
Right, because this is exactly what has happened. So now with the Surrogacy Regulatory Act of 21, which came into force in 22, now all commercial surrogacy is banned. Right. So that means only altruistic surrogacy. Now, what do we mean by commercial surrogacy? Is that the woman was paid, the surrogate was paid to carry the baby till term and to give up. Whereas in altruistic, that is the surrogate is not paid any remuneration for her carrying the baby till term.
Right.
So therefore, the only payment is for her medical bills during the 9 months of pregnancy and in the postpartum period thereafter.
Right.
And also with the altruistic donor, the woman has to be related to the surrogate couple.
It's mandatory that she has
She has
to be related?
No, it was earlier, but that has been amended.
Okay.
Because earlier they wanted someone genetically similar, but now it is any woman who agrees without payment,
Okay.
but has to be close to the couple. So there are eligibility rules which I'll tell you about.
Okay.
So therefore, with altruistic, that narrows down the field tremendously. Because who is going to carry a baby to term, and if you have to be close to the couple, without any remuneration? Very few. So that narrows down the field. So number one. Then number two is that they laid down the rules as to who can be a surrogate and who can be the intending parents.
Correct.
So the intending parents should prove that they have infertility or that the woman cannot carry the baby because of medical reasons, like for example severe heart disease or severe kidney disease, so it's dangerous for her to carry a baby.
Absolutely.
Or she's born genetically without a uterus. So these are the patients who will definitely, they cannot carry their own baby, so they can use a surrogate.
Absolutely.
Now when the surrogate rules came in, Namita, it was such a shock to so many of my patients and our patients all over. There were many of them who already had their embryos waiting for a surrogate. Now what's going to happen to the embryo? It's in limbo. You can't put it in a surrogate, you can't take it out of the country, and you can't have your baby. So much of frustration.
Why can't you take it out of the country and go to a country where it's allowed?
Not allowed.
So you're not even allowed to take your embryo out of the country and use it in a country where it's allowed.
Absolutely.
That just doesn't make sense.
So then what about the age group? It's for the husband up to 55, for the woman 23 to 45 is
and
the
here
age
we're
limit.
talking about up to 50 is the only age till which you can have any sort of fertility treatment in general.
Absolutely, number one. Number two is that they should be married or divorced. So single women are out of the picture.
Which is a question I started with.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
it's
to
redundant,
answer,
isn't it?
It is redundant. And to answer your question with the current rules are very biased against gender discrimination, against women and men, because currently, okay, it's all right to Indian citizens and OCIs. That is allowed.
Right.
Foreigners, it's all right because most countries do not allow foreigners as well. But what about single women? So many women are career oriented. They want to have their babies late. They want to have their own family. They can afford to have a family, but they can't because they can't have a surrogate. Number one, men, single men, they would also like to have a family.
Absolutely.
What about genders? Live-in couples or gay couples, the government is now recognizing them. So they also have a right to have their own family.
Absolutely.
Now with this surrogacy ban, they cannot. So therefore, this is where there is definitely a bias and things have to change.
Right. No, I completely agree with you. And the more youngsters that I meet,
Right.
the youth is moving in a certain direction, right? And
Absolutely.
you cannot have laws that are moving in the opposite direction. You have
Absolutely.
to be aware of where the country, where the culture, where the mindsets are moving.
Absolutely.
So all these points you've pointed out are brilliant.
And another thing is that, we are moving now to a more patriarchal system, because now in 2023, they have banned the use of gametes. That is, a woman cannot use an egg donor.
Okay, let's step back a bit.
Now
a woman cannot use an egg donor only for surrogacy.
For surrogacy.
But what if she doesn't have any eggs, which is one of the most common causes of infertility?
That is the greatest question.
So you could have a willing woman wanting to do it for altruistic reasons. You find that lady, so you're like, hooray. And then you go get tested and you're done with your eggs. And so you can't do...
You can't do surrogacy. But the 23, there's a judgment that the man's sperm can be a donor sperm, but the egg cannot be a donor.
That is discriminatory to another level.
So this actually violates a woman's right to reproduce.
Oh my God,
That's
I wasn't
Article
aware of that.
21 of the Indian Constitution.
So let me repeat this, because I think this deserves repetition.
Right.
So what you're trying to say is that I find a woman who's willing to be a surrogate for altruistic reasons. I cannot get a donor egg, but I can get a donor sperm. So as a woman, if my eggs are fine, I'm okay. But if my eggs are not fine, I cannot be a mom.
That's
because donor eggs are not allowed, but donor sperms are allowed.
That's right.
Oh,
It's only
that definitely
allowed,
needs to change.
and there's one There's only one condition in which donor sperms, donor egg is allowed, and that is the Rokitansky syndrome. That is where a woman is born without a uterus.
But that's a very small percentage.
That is a minuscule percentage.
Exactly. So it cannot be made applicable for something that has a very low probability of happening.
And also one of the indications is infertility. Now this couple have been trying for a long time and they are infertile, so they go in for surrogacy. By that time her age is such, women have a very short biological lifespan.
Absolutely.
And the eggs are, capable of being only up to the age of 40. After the age of 40, the women's eggs are not fertile at all.
Right.
So therefore, this particular rule of no donor eggs really hits women very badly. First of all, great difficulty to find a donor, and then on top of that, you can't do that. So these sort of rules need to be changed for the benefit of women. And I'm a strong proponent for benefits of women.
No, absolutely. And infertility is on the rise. And who decides what an ideal family is and what can or cannot be done when this is such a sensitive, emotional issue, right?
And now with the new rules, they've become so difficult. First of all, of course, it's very good that all the surrogacy centers have now to report and to be registered with the National Board of and the state boards.
Let's talk about the boards.
Yeah, let's talk about the boards.
Because I have read a lot about how, number one, a lot of these boards where you need this certification or a letter of approval don't even exist. Two, where they exist, they're a very large committee of doctors and lawyers and lawmakers and politicians where evolving a consensus is not always easy.
Absolutely.
And so the process becomes so lengthy and bureaucratic. How are we going to get anything done? Is that true?
It's very true. Now, after the surrogacy law, there is, of course, all surrogate centers, and that is a very good part of it. Every center, IVF center, which conducts surrogacy now has to be registered by the national and the state board of assisted reproductive technology and surrogacy. Okay. That is excellent. Now, assume a young couple or a couple who's eligible between that age approaches the surrogacy center for surrogacy. There is so much that the government now requires. Let me read it out to you, Namita.
Please,
because
I
would like it to be absolutely perfect. So when the couple approaches the IVF center, they have to have two certificates from the necessary boards. Mm-hmm. One is a certificate of essentiality, and the second is a certificate of eligibility.
And both these certificates, the board gives them?
The board gives them. So let me see what are the certificates for essentiality. It will be issued upon fulfillment of the following conditions. 1. A certificate of proven infertility of one or both members of the intending couple from a district medical board. Now, this district medical board, who knows when they meet very infrequently, is either a civil surgeon, a gynecologist, and a pediatrician constitutes the board.
Okay.
So they have to get a letter from there.
Correct.
Then they have to get an order of parentage and custody of the surrogate child, which is then passed by a magistrate's court.
Oof.
And third, they have to show insurance coverage for a period of 36 months, covering the postpartum delivery complications for the surrogate, and this insurance company should be recognized by the government. So this is the letter of essentiality certificate. Then they have to have certificate of eligibility.
Okay.
Now, certificate of eligibility to the intending couple is upon fulfillment of the following conditions. The couples being Indian citizens, married for at least 5 years, between the ages of 23 to 50 years old wife and 26 to 55-year-old husband. They do not have any surviving child, biological, adopted, or surrogate. They should not have any of these children. This would not, of course, include a child who is mentally or physically challenged or suffers from a life-threatening disorder or fatal illness. So those children are exempt. Those coupled with those children are exempt. And other conditions which may be specified by regulations. So these are the two certificates the intending couple has to produce. Now let us see the certificate that the surrogate has to come.
Oh my God, there's more.
There's eligibility criteria for surrogate mother. To obtain a certificate of eligibility from the appropriate authority, the surrogate mother has to be a close relative or known, now it's been changed to known to the intending couple. A married woman having a child of her own, her age group should be only between 25 to 35 years. A surrogate only once in her lifetime and possesses a certificate of medical and psychological fitness for surrogacy. And further, the surrogate cannot provide her own gamete, her own eggs she cannot provide.
The surrogate cannot give her own egg?
No, certainly not.
Oh, right, because donor egg is not allowed.
Yes, donor. So that. And then what are the appropriate authorities? The appropriate authorities are the National Board for Assisted Reproductive Technology and Surrogacy and the State Board for the same. So these are the two appropriate authorities. So you have to get these certificates from these authorities.
So basically there are 3 certificates we need.
Yeah.
2 for the intending couple.
And 1 for the
essentiality and eligibility.
Right. That's
and then 1 for the surrogate mother.
Absolutely.
And all these 3 certificates come from different boards.
Absolutely.
You spoke about a district board, a national board, a state board.
That's right.
Which in themselves, there is a question mark in terms of how many of these exist.
Absolutely.
Are we creating laws that are making it difficult for people to become parents?
Through surrogacy, yes. Now, earlier we had rampant surrogacy. Everyone was, it was so wonderful. But now they've cracked down. And the reason they have cracked down is very genuine reasons. But as I said, they have thrown the
baby along with the bathwater
and made it difficult.
Best way to describe it.
You see, what happened is all IVF centers and surrogacy centers had a surrogacy agency. Now that agency was a separate agency, which was very reliable. So what I would suggest to the government is allow the commercial surrogacy, keep the surrogacy centers under tight control,
Correct.
like you have this PCPNDT Act.
Absolutely.
And keep the surrogacy agencies under tight control. These surrogacy agencies would be liaising between the IVF center and the surrogate. So they would handhold the surrogate and their intending couple throughout this extremely complex journey. For example, they would select the surrogate, allow the intending couple to select the surrogate. They would look after the surrogates legally throughout, ensure that all the legalities were perfect, that the surrogate would give up the child, and also that the surrogate would get the appropriate compensation that she was promised.
Absolutely. So having those checks and balances, audits, inspection,
that
and not just the fertility center, but also the agencies is a better way of dealing with it.
It's a better way. Now with altruistic, you don't have that hand-holding.
You're
so
right.
You have to navigate, these poor couples have to navigate such a difficult path. And IVF centers can't do it for them. They have to do all their legalities by themselves.
Absolutely.
So it's made life very difficult. And you tell me, which woman would carry a baby and a friend, and would it have so many issues, emotional issues?
Absolutely.
See, if it's a close relative or someone known to you, then the surrogate child, when born, will question, why was not my mother? Who's my real mother? Because you're known to each other.
Right.
So many questions. There would be falling out of relationships between the two.
Absolutely. That's a very beautiful angle you brought out.
And you are now creating a Pandora's box of all sorts of emotional issues as well.
Which is going to impact the child's mental health going forward.
Absolutely going
and
forward.
make the family possibly, dysfunctional.
So my take on this is, as an IVF specialist, as a gynecologist who's worked now for 43 years, my take is allow commercial surrogacy with severe checks. Now, PCPNDT, there's severe checking.
Yes, of course.
You can't have ultrasound machines, you can't, and this continue. So have both the surrogate center and the surrogate agency under strict rules. The same rules now, that if you subvert the rules, it's 10 lakhs of fine and 10 years imprisonment. So if you make imprisonment the norm for those who taught the rules, then everyone, it's a win-win situation for
There's
everybody.
healthy fear for the ones misusing it.
Absolutely.
And the ones who are not misusing it don't have all these constraints.
Absolutely.
I think, Kiran, this is just a very brilliant solution that you have recommended as someone who's dealing with it on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely.
And let's just take a moment to understand that when we talk about other countries other than India, is this what they do? How many countries are allowing, not allowing? And then the ones who are allowing, is this their sort of method of making sure there's no misuse?
No, you see, Many countries ban surrogacy altogether. There are some who allow only altruistic, and there are very few countries which allow international surrogacy. Now, as of now, it is only Georgia, Ukraine, some parts of Greece, and the United States of America. These are allowing surrogacy.
Okay.
And this is international commercial surrogacy.
Okay.
Now, countries of the European Union, most of them do not allow commercial. Some of them allow altruistic, but only to their own citizens, and there's a law with it.
Okay.
Israel allows, but not international.
Understood.
So there are many countries. Now, Australia also allows altruistic, but not commercial. Italy, France, Germany, they do not allow at all. No surrogacy at all, banned.
So we're not the only country.
No, we are not the only.
This is a global.
This is a global phenomenon.
Phenomenon
Absolutely.
and issue
There
that's
are
a big
only
debate.
3 or 4 countries in the world. Even I believe Georgia now is closing their doors. India, in fact, when the stringent rules were coming, they allowed Nepal. And then everyone was going to Nepal, and all the foreigners were flocking there until the earthquake happened, and all the surrogates in a building died because of the earthquake. And now Nepal has also clamped on. Thailand, everyone was going to Thailand. Then there was rampant, this sort of thing which was happening in India. So nefarious activities were happening. It was not that they were not happening.
Right.
But the countries which are allowing altruistic, or even commercial, they have strict rules. So India can have this thing, but the rules should be a little bit more, I would say, women-centric.
Absolutely.
Not
and,
patriarchal, but more for women.
Coming from a woman who
Right.
practices this and sees this day in and day out, what I love about the way you've shaped this issue is you've given such a balanced outlook. You've pointed out why these laws
Right.
came in place, what was being misused. At the same time, you've given a perspective of what are the things that possibly could change to make it more woman-friendly. So I think a very balanced outlook, a lot of food for thought, not just for India, but for many other countries.
Absolutely.
Where women in those countries are facing similar issues. Any parting thoughts, Kiran? Anything that you would like to communicate to our audience on this topic?
I would say that, the rules should be changed. We should allow single mothers surrogacy. We should allow single men. We should allow gay couples. Everyone has the right to reproduction and have a family. Adoption laws are very good, but very, very long drawn out. It takes a couple years and years to adopt. Also, if your age is like 45, etc., you get older children, so there's so many. Every woman should, when assisted reproductive technology has advanced so much, then why not every woman should have a child, is what I say. And it's a plea that definitely, since PC-PNDT Act worked so well with female feticide and prevention of detection of the sex of the gender of the child. So now today you hardly have any female feticide in India. India has triumphed. So just like the PC-PNDT Act, we should have very, very strong surrogacy act where people will be definitely in jail if they go, the doctors, if any because otherwise, what happens is surrogacy will happen. It'll
keep getting misused if there isn't that healthy fear and
absolutely
punishment.
Yeah, so there should be a punishment, and there should be surrogacy as well, I feel.
Absolutely. This brings us to the end of another, I would say, a very emotional episode, because Kiran has so beautifully laid out a lot of things that need to change. And she so beautifully said, who decides who can and cannot be a parent? So let's get educated. Let's really understand. Let's work towards talking more about this issue. And maybe at some point, somebody will hear a collective opinion and make some changes that are much needed. Thank you very much.